Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. Today, my group and I will be presenting about the Israel-Palestine conflict, which is one of the longest and most serious issues in international relations. This conflict has gone on for decades and caused massive violence and displacements of thousands of people, especially in Gaza. Civilians have been suffering from human rights violations and things have gotten even worse during the escalations in 2021 and recently from 2023 to 2024. People in the conflict zones are struggling without access to food, clean water, fuel, and even medical care. Now, we move on to the legal side of this conflict. There are a serious violations of international humanitarian law happening here. This includes war crimes, attacks on civilians, and the use of blockades, which cut people off from the basic needs. The Geneva Conventions are one of the main international law that should be protect civilians during war, but they are being ignored in many cases. Some scholars and experts even believe that what's happening here in Gaza could be considered genocide. From the perspective of international political economy, the conflict also brings huge consequences. Both sides receive billions in foreign aid, but in Gaza, the economy has been seriously damaged because of the blockades, sanctions, and repeated military attacks. These factors have left Gaza heavily dependent on outside aid just to survive. This shows how political decisions and conflict directly affect a region's economy. One recent incident that show how wide the impact of this conflict can go is the seizure of Kapalaya medley by the Israeli forces. This ship was on a humanitarian mission and its seizures highlight how the conflict isn't just happening on land. It also affects sea routes and international trade. Humanitarian missions and aid deliveries by sea are now also at risk, which make it even harder to help people in need. It shows how far-reaching and conflict really is. Even global shipping and aid routes are being affected.
I will explain the role of the United Nations UN to solve Israel-Hamas issue resolution. The Israel-Hamas conflict has resulted in a serious humanitarian crisis, especially in Gaza. In response, the United Nations has carried out various forms of humanitarian intervention, from delivering aid and protecting civilians to advocating for ceasefire and human rights. First is UN General Assembly. Its play role as the forum for all the UN members to have equal voices in multilateral discussion about international issues. On 27 October 2023, the UN and several agencies such as OIC encouraged to do ceasefire so that humanitarian aid can be delivered to Palestinians immediately. It is because during the war, the Israel blocked the humanitarian aid entry from entering the place. Second, UNICEF. During the war, the kids are the most affected victim after the women in Gaza. According to UNBA 2024, UNICEF provides clean drinking water, vaccines, nutritious food, and emergency medical treatment for save lives and reduce the risk of disease. At the same time, psychosocial support services are given to help children recover emotionally and mentally from the trauma and the fear they experienced during the war. These solutions enable them to enjoy equal human rights as everyone else. Next, the United Nations World Food Programme WFP. According to AMIN 2025, the United Nations World Food Programme WFP addressed the major food insecurity and hunger issues that emerged from the Israel-Hamas conflict starting in October 2023. They provide emergency food aid to Gaza residents, such as wheat flour, to provide basic food supplies. For a long-term solution, the WFP provides cash-based assistance to support local economy and at the same time support local market in Gaza and West Bank to rebuild food supply chains and local microeconomies. Furthermore, responsibility to protect. It is the protection to everyone, including strongly criticized the attacks on people, hospitals, schools, and religious places. The resolution that they do is publish reports and official statements about violation of international humanitarian law, WHO, and OCHA. They also urge for a humanitarian ceasefire to allow medical help and evacuation of victims while bringing global attention to the violence and the increasing number of civilian deaths.
The next major role of the UN is creating humanitarian corridors. These are safe routes used to deliver emergency aid and help civilians escape from dangerous areas. The UN works together with neighboring countries like Egypt and Jordan to open the borders temporarily. Agencies like UNRWA and OCHA help negotiate short ceasefire so trucks carrying food, clean water, and medicine can enter conflict zone. This is really important because many people in Gaza have no access to basic supplies. The goal is to let rescue teams and medical workers safely reach people who are trapped and injured. At the same time, civilians are given a chance to evacuate from the high-risk area. The result is that emergency aid can actually reach the victim, helping to reduce hunger, prevent disease, and save life during critical times. And the last role of the UN is raising global awareness about the conflict. In the situation like this, it is very easy for false information or propaganda to spread. So, the UN helps by providing accurate updates, verified reports, and press briefings to the public and international media. By doing this, they help the global community to understand what really happening in Gaza. This puts pressure on the parties involved in the conflict to follow international law and stop violence against civilians. It also motivates more countries and humanitarian organizations to step in, whether by sending aid, providing medical teams, or offering political support. The effect is greater international involvement, more humanitarian funding, and stronger efforts to hold responsible parties accountable for their actions.
So for my part, I will explain about the international law that the United Nations uses to guide its humanitarian intervention in the Israel and Palestine conflict. There are three main laws. One of that is the responsibility to protect. Secondly is the Rome Statute of the ICC, and the lastly is the customary international humanitarian law. Each of these laws plays an important role in helping the UN to protect the civilians and also respond to the war crime. First is the responsibility to protect, or we call it as R2P. This principle comes from the 2005 UN World Summit. In paragraph 138, it says that each state has the duty to protect its people from genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and also the crime against humanity. Then, paragraph 139 adds that if a state fails to do this or is one of committing this crime, the UN and international community have the responsibility to step in using peaceful action like diplomacy and also the humanitarian aid. In this case of the Israel and Palestine, many civilians have been killed or displaced, especially in Gaza. That's why the UN uses R2P to call for the ceasefire, request humanitarian access, and also send diplomats to protect the civilians. Second is the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, or we call it ICC. This law defines serious international crimes. Article 7 talks about the crimes against humanity, including murder and forced displacement, while Article 8 lists war crimes like attacking civilians or bombing hospitals. These actions have happened in the Israel and Palestine conflicts, and since Palestine joined the Rome Statute in 2015, the ICC has the authority to investigate crimes in that area. The UN helps by collecting evidence, supporting investigation, and also reporting human rights violations. This law allowed the UN to seek justice when local governments fail to hold people accountable. Last but not least is the customary international humanitarian law, or we call it IHL, by the RCRC. Rule number 1 of IHL says that all parties in this conflict must distinguish between the civilians and also the fighters. Rule 14 says they must avoid attacks that cause too much civilians harm. But in this conflict, we see that many attacks on schools, homes, and also hospital. The UN refers to this rule when pushing for the humanitarian protection. They use IHL to monitor military actions, protect aid workers, and also reduce the civilian suffering during the war. In conclusion, all three these international law helps the UN to act responsibly, protect civilians, and also promote the peace in the ongoing Israel and Palestine crisis.
Let's talk about how politics plays a role in international decisions, especially when powerful countries are involved. Powerful nations like the United States often use their political influence to protect their allies, even when those allies commit human rights violence. For example, the US regularly support Israel when Israel action in Palestine cause great suffering. In solutions like this, the US may block or veto action in United Nations that could hold Israel accountable. This means international decisions are often made not based on justice or fairness, but on alliance and national interest. Because of this, institutions like UN Abolition, they cannot take real action or stop the violence. And in the end, there is no accountability, thus responsibility or harm are not punished, and innocent people, especially in places like Palestine, continue to suffer. Another major political issue is how aid and resources are used or blocked. Because of political decisions, Israel has placed an economic blockade on Gaza. They say it is to weaken Hamas and protect their oil security. But this blockade also makes life extremely hard for the people living in Gaza. It limits access to basic needs like food, clean water, and medicine. This situation is deeply influenced by international politics. The US strongly support Israel, while countries like Iran and Turkey support Hamas. After Hamas won the election in 2006, the US and Israel cut off financial support to Gaza. That made the humanitarian situation even worse. Even when organizations like the United Nations want to help, political conflict get in the way. How the blockade hurts Gaza's economy. The people in Gaza are suffering because of the blockade and the conflict. Many of them live in poverty. They don't have enough food, clean water or medicine. There are not enough jobs and many people cannot work. Farm and business are damaged. People cannot trade or move freely because of the checkpoints and attacks. They make it very hard for economy to grow. Even giving aid is difficult. Trucks with food and medicine are often delayed or blocked. This is not just because of war. Political decisions keep the blockade in peace. This choice makes life harder every day for the people in Gaza.
The conclusion is, the Israel-Palestine conflict remains a serious humanitarian and legal crisis, although the UN plays an important role. Political and economic interests often limit its impact. To achieve lasting peace, we need a global cooperation, fair enforcement of international law, and a strong protection for civilians.